out there hear some voices.
Yep. Hi everyone. Thanks for being here. My name's Rosemarie Milsom. I'm the director of the Newcastle Writers Festival. It's nice to be out in public again in a room full of people. I was thinking it's been about a year since I've been at a public event, even of this size, so it's really lovely to be here. I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathered today on the unceded land of the Worimi and Awabakal people. Pay my respect to elders past and present, and I welcome Aboriginal people who are with us this afternoon, including one of our wonderful panellists, who you'll hear from. I won't be able to shut him up, actually. So look, I'm going to be guiding the discussion for about 30 minutes, and then we'll take questions for about 15. Please use Slido for the questions, and we'll probably take the top questions. We'll head to the top. So joining you this afternoon to share their perspective about the priorities for the Hunter when it comes to building a world-class tourism offering and attracting global enterprise are immediately to my right, and you may have already heard him this morning, is Peter Cox, CEO of Newcastle Airport. I really need to say not much more other than that. Welcome, Peter. And Elizabeth Mildwater is the CEO of Greater Sydney Commission, and Elizabeth joined as the Commissioner about a year ago. And prior to this, she was the Deputy Secretary, Greater Sydney, at Transport for New South Wales, where she was responsible for delivering customer-centred services and infrastructure for the Sydney metropolitan area. And down the end is Andrew. Andrew Smith is the CEO of Worimi Local Aboriginal Land Council. Andrew is passionate about Aboriginal tourism and the growth and empowerment of his community. He's also the founder and owner of Sand Dune Adventures, just up the road here at Port Stephens. And you haven't lived until you've torn around those sand dunes in the rain, chasing him on a quad bike, which I was lucky enough to do, and had a lot of fun. Nice to see you again. So welcome the panel. So as the region readies for the opportunities, and we know there's opportunities on the horizon. I don't think we need to really outline what those opportunities are. I'd like to ask each one of you, and I'm not going to direct each question to all three of you, but this question I'm really keen to hear from each of you. Could I ask each of you to highlight one priority? So it's a tough one, just one key priority that's going to enable us to capitalise on greater global access. And I might just start with you, Peter, because you're immediately to my right. If you had to pick one priority.
So my one priority would be, and I mentioned it in my talk, without a terminal, none of this happens. So we've got the airfield infrastructure, and we just need that terminal infrastructure to make it happen. So it's like the road kind of doesn't quite go to where the destination we need to at the moment, and that's what we need. Oh, and the first airline is my second one priority.
Yeah, all right, asterisks.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, what about you? What do you think the key priority is from your perspective?
Yeah, look, I might say something different at the other end of the spectrum because I know there's a lot of talk about the hard infrastructure. I guess one of the things that's really live for everyone everywhere at the moment is attracting talent. And we heard this a year or so ago when we started doing research overseas, but geez, it's got worse the last year. Like, it is chronic everywhere at the moment. So I would say all the things that a great city needs to attract people to live here, not just to visit here. You're not going to get the staff you need to support the business if you can't attract. So things like Jeff was talking about before, universities, affordable housing, all of that stuff is equally important to support the people that you want to live here.
And is this COVID related?
It's got worse with COVID. But yes, we saw it starting to emerge early last year in terms of, I'll say it, younger people, people that want to work in innovative industries. They're actually picking where they live around the world by the place. It's not just the highest pay, right, or where they've always lived. So they're very mobile and they will move to a great place to live, which is a great opportunity for Newcastle, right? But it was already emerging, and I think COVID's made it much worse, particularly because you can work from anywhere just about now. So even companies that have their theoretical base in Sydney, Atlassian as an example, their staff live all over the state, and that's just going to continue. So it's a great, Newcastle has that as a huge selling point, right? It's a great place to live. So putting all the pieces together to attract the talent, I think, is up there.
Yeah, I mean, you could have we keep talking about the job opportunities, the employment opportunities. but you need people to take up those opportunities.
Yeah.
Andrew, what about you? What would be the key priority from your perspective? I mean, you're a tourism operator, you have connection with community, with the Aboriginal communities, so, and that has its, has its own priorities. What's your perspective?
So a couple of priorities I would see are, we talk about, I was reading and listening to the news just this morning, and the take-up of people buying homes in the Newcastle Hunter Valley area has gone down, but people are less mobile because of COVID. Post-pandemic, that's going to change, we know that. So we need to understand the post-pandemic traveller. What are they looking for? They want space, they want connection, they want to feel that they're in an environment where they're valued and protected. They're moving in smaller groups, individually, whether they're FITs coming visiting family. But this really big, massive movement of people is not going to happen as quickly as we might like it. We're building a terminal, or we're going to get a terminal, we're going to be international. So a collaborative marketing approach that shows us as the gateway to not only the Hunter but other regions. Let's get them to set footprint in our backyard. We're building a lens on who we are as a culture of Novocastrians, and we want people to press their footprint on our land here, and we want them to stay and play, as simple as that. But the biggest thing for me, priority, would be infrastructure. I'm a local, I've been here for 51 years, and I'm sure most of you experienced getting off a plane at Newcastle Airport and you can't catch a taxi. Imagine how hard it's going to be for a foreigner when they all get off, especially if they're fully independent travellers. And in that international market, these inbound tour operators and these wholesalers and these agents, it's their life, it's their reputation. You build real grassroots friendships and relationships with these people, and they're relying on you to deliver, and they're booking people 12, 18 months in advance. And if you screw that up and that experience is bad simply because they can't get a taxi or an Uber or catch a bus or a train with the ease of access to our area, that's going to feed back and they're not going to come. So infrastructure, for me, is one of the biggest things. Do we have enough transport logistics in place? Do we have enough accommodation? And what are our food resource outlets making it more of an immersive experience when they hit the ground?
Peter, you look like you wanted to say something. Did you want to add to that at all, or it was just a movement?
Oh, just a movement, just a
Just a
nod,
movement,
agreeing
just a nod.
with Andrew. But having people, that ease, I mean, it's frictionless. It all needs to be frictionless, because that then attracts them and makes them want to come and stay and be more sticky.
Elizabeth, I might just jump in here too. Given your background in transport, what's your sense of how important that infrastructure is and the elements that need to be put in place in the next couple of years?
Oh, it's probably not even just the next couple of years. It does go on and on. I guess, there's several layers to that, aren't there? There's the big, and ever since we've been up here talking to people, it's usually a very short conversation before people talk about the really big interconnectors between Newcastle and other places. I mean, you've got a great big road, but maybe you could do better with rail. So it's the big interconnectors, but a lot of it, like what you were talking about, Andrew, is local and local services. What we did a lot of work when I was at Transport in Sydney was trying to get the different bits of transport to join up. So the buses and the trains and the timetables to the buses work with the planes, that sort of thing. I think that's probably what you need, a whole system developed. And there are some bits here, like Newcastle has some great things, the light rail, some on-demand transport and that, but you need the whole system. So that's not just hard infrastructure, that's a lot of services and service planning, which is, not as expensive, right, as building big connectors, but Newcastle probably needs a bit of both.
Yeah. I mean, and Newcastle does have a lot of wonderful, excellent infrastructure, and there's lots of small community suburbs that are putting in absolutely fantastic facilities, especially around the lake. But we also need to create greater connectivity to our regional areas that are within our own backyard. Like Port Stephens, it's one of the jewels. It's the jewel of the Nile as far as, I mean, you can't go anywhere in the world and get what you get in Port Stephens with those beautiful crystal blue waters. You can't. And if you're a local, you know that if you say, I'm going to the bay, you don't mean Warners Bay, you mean Milsom Bay. That's where you're heading. It's as simple as that. But Warners Bay itself, the infrastructure they put in place is absolutely sensational. So if we're going to put in infrastructure, we also need to complement what our locals are looking for. We don't want to do this in exclusion of them. We should be consulting with our locals and our families and our communities and saying to them, we're going to put this infrastructure in place, but we don't want to make a spaghetti jigsaw puzzle mess, a dog's breakfast of our own backyard to complement the international market. We want to make sure that it complements them, because if we hit another pandemic and they don't come, our bread and butter and our relationships are our community, our local people. That's where we need to be also focusing our attention as well. And we need to create greater connectivity. We can talk about the Hunter with the wines and the beaches and all that. But if they can't get there, then you're wasting your time.
Peter, I know you mentioned in your keynote Gold Coast and Hobart. You referred to them. I mean, do they stand out to you, even nationally, internationally, as examples of success that have made this transition? All of these priorities that we're talking about, they've acted on.
Oh yeah, very much so. And just adding on to Andrew's point, I think we've got to change our mindset. All the data presented is there's a lot of day tripping out of Sydney. Those people mostly have cars. So they've got a certain amount of mobility and you need car parks for them and all that stuff. But international travel is very unlikely to have cars. And so that really just reinforces, I think, the point Andrew was making, and it's changing our mindset to the international traveller. To go to the success factors, I mean, I think we talked about the time it takes and the perseverance and the coordination. New Zealand is another really great example where they've got an amazing brand and they've been successful. I think for us, though, success isn't mimicking Gold Coast. Auntie Teresa told us, keep your culture, think of country, think of being authentic to who we are. Ollie Lamb said that as well. So
That's what Andrew's saying too, that connection.
Yeah. I know what my culture is, and culture isn't what you do, it's who you are. It's lifestyle. So when you talk about Aboriginal culture and you like the paintings and the dreamings and our songlines and our practices, customs, traditions and beliefs, they are all evidence of our occupational lifestyle. They are highlights and glimpses back into a traditional past. But the evolution of lifestyle has changed, and we are all collectively custodians in this space and place. There's no ownership of country. We all have the same shared responsibility until we can develop what is our culture collectively with our collective consciousness, especially around global tourism. We're never going to be able to bottle it and sell it to the world. And we need to workshop that.
And isn't it exciting, though? It's being proud to stand up and understand who we are and tell everyone about it.
Yeah. Who are you? If I asked you what your culture was, most people... Look, I'm on the Aboriginal Advisory Committee for the Knights. And on Australia Day, they separated them into their cultures. They let the Aboriginal people go over here, the Maoris there. And the Aussies sat there and literally communicated that they were lost. What is our culture? So let's help them unpack what that means. I would say if you're a Novocastrian, you love the beaches, that's connection. You love the vineyards, that's connection. You love the Wadikan Mountains and the Great Dividing Range. And you love that sense of community, that sense of blue-collar worker, grassroots. Let's get behind our local people, our local sports. That's culture. That's who we are. When someone steps off that plane, we want to be able to serve them an excellent bottle of that stuff and make them want to keep coming back. That's relationship. If we don't start having, and we need to train ourselves around that space, because the international market, there's a few operators in the room. I see my beautiful sister down here. She's looking at something else at the moment. Bless, Mel. But
You're boring
the
her,
language,
mate. You're boring her.
She's writing this down. The language of the international market was foreign to me. You talk about we've got cars to move about, the FIT, fully independent travellers. Our people, we need to do some in-house training within our own backyards to help them understand the acronyms and the movement and the relationships and the connections of the international market, because there are many different, and it is a competitive world. It is a dog-eat-dog world, and they are out there competing for the same business that we're trying to get. And if we're not making the right noises, again, we're wasting it. So we need some in-house training with our own people to understand what that means. And we don't want to be a Gold Coast. We're not a Gold Coast. Let's not do that. But I think we're probably almost a little bit of Tasmania. That produce to the plate type campaign. Tasmania have this fantastic local little tourism road that actually goes out to the small producers and takes you through right across the whole of their little contained continent, if you might want to call that. Sadly, we missed them on the map for the Olympic Games, but that's a whole different story. But little things like that, let's highlight those small, who we are as a people. But people don't want to come and be sitting in an 85-storey high-rise disconnected from country. They want to have grassroots experiences, not just with Aboriginal people, but with all of us together. They want to share that story, and they'll keep coming back. They will.
How important in the road ahead is collaboration? Peter, how important to sort of get to where we want to go?
I think there's been said by a number of people, individually, that might be okay for competing, again, in the Sydney market, but collectively, we need to create that collective identity, as Andrew was saying. And a collective identity comes by coming together and having yarns and having chats. The other one I like to use is a phrase called, I mentioned it to you, co-opetition, which is about cooperating and then you can compete. Sure, you know that's good. That's healthier. That makes us better. But let's get them here first before we compete with them. Don't try and slit each other's throat. Come together, and sometimes that's a bit of compromise, and sometimes it's swallowing pride about what's in a name. You know, who gets which logo, what image appears on what thing. Sometimes it's about the bigger picture, about the bigger win. What's the phrase? I mentioned to someone, do you want to be right or do you want to win?
And that's something we've seen consistently too. If there's something that, you know, we would love to sort of help with, it's figuring out also you're collaborating with whom and to compete against whom. So that's one thing Newcastle has to work out. You're not competing with Sydney, you're not competing with Western Sydney. We're all in this together, and our idea is that we work together to beat Singapore, to beat whoever else it is. You know, they're the competition. It's not the people that are just down the road or the next business. I guess what we've found that works in some other places is, and we're doing this live with some of our people around, for example, Westmead, to work out how we get all the medical people to work together. It's trying to get everyone to lift up and agree what's the big aim? How do you describe the big vision? Because most people agree on that. And then you can figure out how you all work together to get there. Whereas if you start down in the, I do this bit and you do that bit, often it does end up like this. But if you don't, I lift it right up and work out who you're actually competing with. If you concentrate on competing with each other, you don't get there. And frankly, even Sydney-Melbourne competition I find a bit silly. If you're sitting in Hong Kong or Singapore, you're not, you know, that's not where we want to get the tourists down here so they go to the whole lot, not competing with each other.
So who do we enlist to support this vision? Who that, you know, we're talking about collaboration. Who do we need to collaborate? I mean, obviously there's levels of government, but who do we enlist to get this support and to also aid this vision?
Andrew, he's got the passion.
Well, let's leave the silos on Kooragang and start breaking down the silos we've created in our own backyards to start with. There are already a number of tourism experts that are within their own local government areas that know the landscape better than anybody. They are literally a part of the landscape. I think we need to have a stronger relationship with Destination New South Wales because the support and the knowledge that comes with their marketing expertise, campaign development and stuff is excellent. I think we also need to have a relationship with Tourism Australia because what they provide goes beyond my comprehension of support. They've been absolutely excellent, both of those organisations. And we might also need to have a relationship with Austrade. And we need to maybe we need to create a PCG or an NCG, a Novocastrian consultancy group. I don't know, something like that. But we need to collectively come together. It's human nature to be competitive. It just is. And that's the reality. But we need to first understand who we are as a collective conscious people, communities, under one banner. And then once they're here and hit the ground and we've got that captured audience, then we can start our politely respectful competitive edges and points of difference on the ground. But again, let's not cut each other's throat. The market is huge. And when the floodgates open and the pandemic is past, they will come in droves. And there is enough people for all of us. You need to understand what is your own measure of success. For me, it's social investment back into my people to boost the local economy for Port Stephens and even Newcastle, to boost and to provide a social investment and enterprise to promote training, development and employment for Aboriginal people. That's success for me, not having a $3 million profit margin at the end of the year. That money doesn't breed happiness. Money is the ability to do lots of other things. I'm getting off on a tangent, I'm sorry. Your measure of success is obviously your piece of the jigsaw puzzle, but let's not cripple or sacrifice our ability to have a shared collective conscious of marketing on a collaborative approach to really highlight our whole backyard, because you're not connected to one space. Mother Earth is huge and we are the sunrise people, and over in the West they are the sunset, and we have an opportunity to be the gateway to this beautiful continent. It's that simple.
Elizabeth, you should go into politics. I'd buy that. Elizabeth, from your perspective, what would success look like for this region?
Well, firstly, I don't think it's, I will duck the question because it's not for someone who lives in Sydney, I think, to define what success looks like. I think
but I'm
job is
interested
to
in
try,
your, but I think you've got a valid perspective.
Our job is to sort of help you define success, if that's the assistance we can give. But I guess at the real highest level for me, it would be all of the new 6 cities together just really thumpingly successful. We're the place that people of talent, young people from all over the world want to come and live in one of our 6 cities and either work in that one or one of the others. And maybe, the ultimate future is they come and they live in Newcastle because they actually think they can work there 3 days a week and 2 days somewhere else. That's success, is that the whole picture sells much bigger than any of the individual pieces, and that's both tourism, but I will keep coming back to it. You can't paint something over the top and try and sell that to the world. It has to be authentic. So this has to be, like, the whole place has to be somewhere. If you aim for something that people want to live and work here and then translate that into tourism, it'll be even bigger, right? It's not just sort of
100%.
doing something just for foreigners. And a lot of the stuff we talked about local travel and everything, that will make life better for local people. It will also make it work better for the tourists that you bring in.
Absolutely.
What about for you, Peter? What would success look like?
I think it's about creation. I mean, Andrew talks about social enterprise. We're very much in midway between that social enterprise and a sort of a full for profit. We do things for regional benefit. We are the airport the region deserves. That's our aspiration, at least, anyway. So that authenticity and being authentic to ourselves and a thriving sort of region that's still very much Newcastle. You come back 20 years later and you go, wow, this is like I remember it, but kind of better and shinier and great and nicer or grungier. So this, the jobs, the economic activity is great. That's what I want.
And what about, we've talked a lot about tourism, that tourist focus, but what about the kind of global exchange of ideas, not just people moving from A to B? How can we sort of, do you have a perspective on how we can capitalise on that, how that might be facilitated? We obviously have the university, but are there other avenues for that sort of, so we're not just a receptacle for visitor numbers, that Newcastle becomes, a leader globally with ideas, with innovation? Yeah.
It's been a really interesting theme that's come out of this about First Nations, Aboriginal people. It's come through a number of times in this. And I was just kind of thinking, we're almost like the soul city. That's a kind of, people want experiences, they want enrichment, they want enlivenment. So there might be something in that, I think, in terms of that authenticity to country. And that's who maybe we are. And like you say, I got sold by Andrew. But I think that connectivity and that digital's great, but people actually being together with people, you can't go away from that. People talk about our business, will Zoom kill your airport? Well, human beings are human beings, and we like to be face to face. We'd like to have that connection. And so connecting people and making it easier to physically connect, I think that's where the social engagement comes from. And Writers' Festival or something.
Right, I was about to say, I mean, it's the same argument about books will die and, with the internet, there will be no books and bookshops will close. And, I mean, because of COVID, publishing's had record success. All the publishers have experienced record success because we've all been turning to books and reading in greater numbers. And so hopefully that'll carry over to Writers' Festival attendance in April. We'll see. Elizabeth, what about you? What do you think that we need to do? What do we need to prioritise in terms of looking at, I suppose, I mean, it's a bit intangible. We're talking about ideas and we're talking about intellectual kind of property and creativity, but how do we, place ourselves in that context? Do you have to be sort of this outward-looking, engaging place with the world?
So I think you need to work out what it is. So ideas, fantastic, but lots of places are competing to be, smart places and everything. It's what is the thing that if someone is standing on the other side of the world, they'll say, geez, Newcastle is the place in the world for that. Now, people are talking about clean energy, right? Maybe that's it. But you need to be absolutely crisp, clear, and the best of the best at something. And so that then attracts all the smart people around that, the universities, the companies that want to invest, all of that. But you need to have a really clear proposition, because it's not just, yes, it is exchanging ideas, but it's ideas about what. And that's what I guess also, every place needs to understand. That's not that that's the only thing that you would do, but you need something that everyone knows that Newcastle is just, the world leader in something. And so that's why they want to come here and talk about it and be around the other smart people that are talking about it as well. And I agree totally. That's about being on the ground. Digital is good and essential, but innovation districts all over the world are succeeding because all the smart people want to be together physically on the ground.
Andrew? We'll go to questions when Andrew's had
I'm sick of QR codes. Honestly. We're always on the clock. We are always working towards a deadline. We base our lives on the system of time. In Aboriginal culture, there is no word for time. Time is an illusion in our culture. It's about being present. And when you are present in a moment and you're experiencing the sense of connection and relationship, that's Aboriginality. Aboriginality is not a noun. I might be an Aboriginal man. Aboriginality is a doing thing. It's a verb. It's an adverb. So in those times when you go on holidays and all of a sudden you forget what day it is and there's no time and you're just present, then that's real connection. And we need to start creating more presence for people in place and space. There's no word for time. Don't put us on the clock. Disconnect to connect in our place. There's only a word for place, and place is important. It's so important that I guarantee every single one of you here as a child have got some memory of a place that you went to, that if you go back, the land holds your memories and says, I remember you. We want people to come back. We want to hold their memories for them, waiting for them to return again and again and again. And our point of difference is that we are people. We are not bloody computers. We are not QR codes. Yes, we have to get smarter, more efficient energies and housing structures and all that sort of stuff. Absolutely. But we have to get back to being people first. And they do want authenticity. There's this huge demand for Indigenous flavoured market gardens with restaurants that have got Indigenous flavoured foods. But that belongs to all of us. Your culture has to be unlocked past 232 years. We as Novocastrians and us as Aboriginal people have to give it away to keep it. If we cannot walk together with a cultural contact lens and see land connection in place through the same context, then we're never going to get it right. We have to just become people first. Disconnect to connect. And when they get a piece of that, I guarantee they'll come back.
Seriously, I'm going to be your campaign manager, seriously. We'll go to some questions. They're going to come up on the screen. I'll go with the top one. So you guys don't have to turn around, I'll direct it at probably a specific person. As the world moves towards net zero emissions, how big is the opportunity for the region to export low emission products and attract visitors to our unique natural environment? Well, you could probably all possibly answer that. Peter, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, and it goes back to that connection and authenticity. We've got obviously energy infrastructure, and we can produce gateways and signals to the region that of hydrogen and what we're going to do. I definitely don't think we should be embarrassed about our past. I love that I drive past coal loaders every day to go to work. That makes me proud of what this region's done and come from. I think that the low energy food and goods and services are also about sustainability though. Energy is just one part of sustainability. The other part is, there's lots of parts of the UN sustainability goals. So we can't think about one without thinking more broadly and make sure we focus on all the things that are done. But that again goes to people's experience. They care about what they're putting in their body. They care about what they're seeing and how they walk on the earth kind of thing. So I think that's something we can really be known for. That's not inventing something for here. That's being authentic to here.
This morning, Stephen and Ollie spoke of the importance of a united value proposition. No, that's gone. I'll jump up to the top one. We're travelling down the path of Western Sydney with respect to urban sprawl to the west that is not serviced by appropriate public transport and other infrastructure. How does the hunter get its fair share of funding? Well, obviously, Elizabeth, I'm looking at you.
Yes, and so that is not a model that you would want. I think Jeff talked about it before. We were invented to stop that sort of east-west, condemning people to travelling like that for the rest of their lives. So there's a few ways to tackle it, and we haven't solved it completely in Sydney, but there's a few ways. It is about where you build houses, but it's also about jobs, right? Because the bad thing about the sprawl, aside from the environmental impacts and the condemning people to travel, is the reason they're travelling is because the jobs aren't there as well. So you can tackle it from both ends. It's where you put your houses. Building around existing infrastructure is a good place to start. That raises the terrible word of density that you need to figure out what sort of density you want. But it's also about where you put your jobs, so not putting them, and Newcastle is nowhere near the Sydney issue here, but Sydney traditionally put all its jobs over near the harbour on the eastern side and then built all the houses on the west. We're trying to balance that up so that the jobs are closer to where people are living, and then it doesn't look like a sprawl if they don't have to go very far. But yeah, you need to catch it before it gets too far. So it is about investing in infrastructure, but it's also about being more deliberate about where you build houses.
I'll go to the question I mentioned earlier. This morning, Stephen Ollie spoke of the importance of a united value proposition to differentiate our region. How can the hunter build a united position of strength without the upper hunter in the greater city's strategy?
Is that coming to me?
Yeah. Oh, well, you're all looking. I can't answer it. You're looking at me like, oh. Look, I think you could all contribute to that. You might have a perspective. I don't know that Andrew looked that excited.
Yeah, and so it depends what the united value proposition is for, right? Because just as we're talking about the whole 6 cities need to have one selling message for the rest of the world, then each city has its own. Like, they need to be different. And that's the discussion here, isn't it? What's Newcastle? We say they've all got to be delightfully different. We've got to think of what the special thing is that you're going to leverage. Within the hunter is a huge area, right? So you can still have a selling proposition for the lower, the upper, then every area within it. It's a bit of a mosaic. Doing one, I guess what we were saying and what Jeff was saying earlier, if you're talking about sort of essentially metropolitan city region planning, there comes a point where it doesn't make sense to include it within the boundary of that. But it doesn't mean you don't consider what's outside of the boundary. Just as down south, we'll be working with areas like Wingecarribee, which won't be inside the boundary, but they really want to be involved and part of the story. So that's what we'll do. We'll work with the upper hunter. It's just they won't have that statutory planning piece. That's really the difference.
I mean, my comment, I'm not a town planner, but from our business's perspective, no one gets left behind. I don't care that where the Central Coast is in which city. They're very important part of our catchment. Upper Hunter, absolutely essential. Even North Coast. You've got the Barringtons and Dungog. I was talking to someone before. They're all really important, and a town planning boundary line on the sand is important for many reasons, but doesn't need to be the value proposition, because someone in Singapore doesn't care.
That's right.
They want to do experiences. They want to, have change in their mind and life. So that's what they care about. That's what we can talk to them about. For planning purposes, we need all these boundaries and stuff and elections and all that. But let's work out what they're for and not be distracted by it.
And if I could maybe just build on that to give a classic example. If you talk to a lot of people overseas, they wouldn't know what New South Wales is. Like, I'm sure the tourists we're all talking about, they have no idea what New South Wales is, but they might be able to tell you what they know about Newcastle or Sydney or somewhere else. So again, that's the line on the map is sort of, it's useful for planning purposes, but it's not necessarily what people think of as a place.
And it's about our clients, not about us. So you always got to think about what your client, your customer wants, not about our little...
our identity crisis. Identity crisis. Let's not get started on Newcastle v Hunter. Who is responsible for driving a united approach to promoting the hunter? It's I think a lot about this personally. Who has this role? You've talked this afternoon about Andrew's mentioned, like, we need to work together, and a cohesive sort of branding and message. And, we talked about the flow of infrastructure and coordination and the people who could help collaborate and the people we can enlist or the organisations. But, this is a really key thing. Who is responsible for this? We have this wish list of priorities, but who drives the car to get us there?
Do you want me to have a first crack just from what I've seen?
Elizabeth.
I mean, all of the places we're working and all the places we see that it's successful, there are two big questions, and there's lots of questions. The leadership question comes up and governance. But leadership doesn't necessarily mean it's one person's job that, like, you can sack me if it doesn't work. It's what is that person's job? And often, like, these are big, complex problems, right? So a big piece of this is working out how you're all going to do this. What you might need is someone to help facilitate and coordinate, but it's too big for absolutely one person. And it's more about figuring out how you want to organise yourselves, and that's a lot of what, it's boring, but it's a lot of what we find we can help with, but we're not leading it. It's not ours to own. We're just another piece to sort of help. And I think, you clearly have all the people here that are interested in it. It's more about how you organise yourselves rather than it's one person's job.
Yeah, I'm probably trying to do what's already been successfully achieved in other regional areas. So why don't we use them as a model template? Go and visit those areas and understand how are they achieving their collective leadership approach, and what is the investment from the wider areas into one form of campaign or something like that. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we need to understand and invent who we are as a collective people. But it's already been done in so many other areas, and we should go and look at some of those models. We should nominate a collective group of people that represent us and send them out into the world and say, with a mission statement or a key vision on what it is that they're representing. You know what I mean? It's kind of more recently with the women's rugby league. We talked about how do we do a welcome to country and who do we get for that, and we're trying to get the Knights to embrace the fact that they are connected to our community, and it's kind of, I'm going off another tangent, but I wanted the Aboriginal girls to step forward and the Maori girls, but then I wanted the non-Indigenous, and okay, I'm going to take that back. You're all Indigenous. The world is round. It's not a flat space. There's not only Aboriginal people connected to the earth. If it's Mother Earth, it's not Mother Flat Earth just on Australia. So you're all Indigenous people. The reality is, whether you're Gaelic, Viking, English, Scottish, Irish, it doesn't matter. Just evolution and technology has moved your mindset away from that sense of connection. We've only had 232 years to do that. That's why we're still so heavily connected. And people want to understand, what does that mean? Where do I come from? That's why they created Ancestry.com. Because there's this innate desire, our human desire, to understand, where do I connect? Where do I fit? Well, you connect here. You're born here, and whether you were born here or not, you live here. You've called this place home. You're drawing on the same energy that I draw on. Just because I can count my stars back to time immemorial doesn't make your stars any less important. So we need to be able to go out with this collective, uniformed leadership mission statement and representing who we are. Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander, English, Anglo, everything and anything. We are people. We've got to stop this. And we're doing an us and them thing in our local government areas. It's inevitable because it's just how it is, and we're fighting for funding, and Treasury just love watching us fight like seagulls over the chips. I mean, it's just crazy. But if we need to work out, who are we? Where do we fit in? I think that's the thing, and I think you love what you're saying about this. It's not one person. It can't be one. It won't be me. I'm telling you now. But I love what you're saying. I think
the word collective came up so many times there, right? And that's not a traditional Anglo-Saxon style of leadership, the collective, but it's absolutely essential, and it's what we see everywhere where places are successful. The difference will be that it's a collective sort of strength with not individuals competing, but rising together. If you're relying on one person, they will come and go, right? Or one organisation, they'll come and go.
Yep.
And equally, we can see the places that aren't doing so well, it's because they've got that division and the fighting. You won't get ahead if everyone is competing and arguing.
We need to be like the native bee. A native beehive is called a community hive. The European bee is called a colony hive. And they have a queen and soldiers and workers, and they will send their bees out into the storm and allow them to be killed regardless of the environment, because we have to work. And if the queen's not producing, she gets killed too, and they'll replace her like that. Native bees work as a community, and they will only work in the most pristine conditions. They don't sting, and they work together. And if it's not the pristine conditions, they will bucker down and support each other and keep each other safe within the hive. We need to be like the native bee. It's simple as that.
On that note, that's the end of our conversation. No more time for questions, but I'm sure if you've got a burning question that we didn't get to, I'm sure Peter, Elizabeth and Andrew will be welcome outside of this forum, but thank you very much for your time.
Cheers.
Thank you, three.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Peter, Elizabeth, Andrew and Rosemarie for well, that was a tour de force. I don't know where to start. I got that many notes out of that session. I mean, I've got probably about 10 one-liners I picked up from Andrew. I think there was a lot in thinking about. I heard this earlier this week. Energy is life, and there is this opportunity here around new energy, both sort of literally and metaphorically, that I think we're sort of tapping into, and thinking about who is responsible. My mind was jumping back and forth to everyone's responsible. How does that work in a practical sense? Thinking about things we talk about in the joint organisation, leadership as service, the role of collaboration, co-defining problems, co-defining solutions, dealing with complex issues. So there was an enormous amount in that, and hopefully it's giving everyone some, provoking some thinking for the workshops that are coming up. If you're not familiar with the building layout, please check the floor maps at the front desk. We've got ushers on each floor to help you find your way. Two quick housekeeping items. Can you please, when you leave today, so we'll come back here at 4 p.m, but take your name tags off so that you can come back and get them tomorrow, because we'll have a bunch of new people coming tomorrow and we still want to be able to identify each other. And also, just one thing, if we're not eating and drinking, can we keep our face masks on? I'm finding that particularly difficult, but I'm going to ask everyone to show that caring for each other and keep our face masks on. On that note, let's break for the workshops, and then I'll see everyone back here at 4 p.m.